What is up, Pitt fans? Thank you so much for tuning into Inside the Panthers on YouTube. My name is Stephen Thompson. I'm coming to you live from Cameron Indoor Stadium, the historic, the hallowed, the vaunted Cameron Indoor Stadium, where the Pitt Panthers have not won a men's basketball game since 1979. That is until tonight. Pitt, winners over number 7 Duke by a final score of 80-76. They were led by Blake Hinson, but there were contributions from up and down the lineup. And I think the first thing that comes to mind was, I was lucky enough to sit courtside to watch this game happen. And I think the first thing you noticed was the energy, the intensity that Pitt played with, and then the catharsis that came from that win. They wanted this one incredibly badly, and they want to win every game, but they clearly just knew where they were going into. They knew where they had been, and they knew what the situation was. They knew their backs were against the wall. They knew this was a team that had not only beaten them 4 times in a row, but had dominated them 4 times in a row and dominated them physically, had shown that they are not even in the same weight class. And Pitt punched back in a way that was just completely remarkable from top to bottom. It was a complete effort. It took literally all of the 40 minutes that they played, but the Panthers pulled out a win. And I think hearing from Jeff Capel afterwards, hearing from Blake Hinson and Jalen Lowe as well, I think that catharsis came across really clearly. Jeff Capel almost seemed relieved, felt like, the weight of the world had been lifted off of his shoulders, just to get a win of this magnitude, to win in the way that they did, to win with toughness, to win with physicality, to be able to fight through adversity the way they did and come out on the other side with a victory. It's huge. It's something that this Pitt team hadn't done this season really at all, especially against a team that kind of, we'll call it similar footing, even footing in terms of athleticism and physicality and talent. They beat a team that was better than them. They hadn't done that this year. But, Jeff Capel talked a lot about this team kind of looking like who they were at the beginning of the year. They regained, he used the word spirit. He used the word intensity, kind of the joy of playing. This team felt tense for the past, let's call it 3 weeks or so, past 5 or 6 games. And they finally were able to pull something positive out of a situation where I don't think anyone, the people in the stands, the fans watching at home, everyone sitting in press row, I don't think anyone expected much of these Panthers coming into Cameron Indoor Stadium, facing a team that had just so thoroughly dominated them more than any other team really that they face on a regular basis, especially in the ACC. And they beat them at their own game. I mean, that's like, we talked about it all year, but like toughness and physicality and being mature and serene in difficult moments has been not Pitt's strong suit for this entire season. And it was their strong suit tonight. I mean, you've got Blake Hinson knocking down 7 threes in a row, and that's just natural talent. But I was most impressed by the veteran leadership that Ish Leggett showed, the determination to drive to the basket and get tough buckets and defend, playing both ends of the floor. Jalen Lowe committing 0 turnovers committing 0 turnovers in 30 minutes. Bub Carrington, only 2 turnovers as well, while dishing out a pair of assists. Jalen Lowe had 6 assists. The presence of mind that those young freshmen had, controlling the ball, controlling the pace of the game. You're sitting in a cauldron of noise when you're in the middle of Cameron Indoor Stadium, man. It gets loud, and it gets loud in a hurry. The students are right on top of you. It's a difficult place to play, especially for a guy who was playing high school basketball. Let's call it not even less than a year ago. This guy was, he's not supposed to be someone who's stepping up in the middle of a place like this, an environment like this, and doing what he did. And Jalen Lowe was an absolute star tonight. I think he showed you what he is at his best, what his potential can be. And he was one of the biggest reasons that Pitt won. He hit big shots as well. He also got a really great effort from Federico, a guy who had been benched, a guy who hadn't been playing well, a guy who felt like, according to Jeff Capel, that he was letting his team down by not playing well. And he comes on this floor against a future lottery pick in Kyle Filipowski, and he plays the best game of his career, hands down. It is the little things. It is the ability to keep your cool through, let's call it what it was, a questionable officiating game, a game where not a lot of the calls make sense. The Panthers ended up on the wrong side of some questionable foul calls, but they played through it. They did their fair share of complaining. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Jeff Capel probably deserved a technical at some point. Blake Hinson got a technical that he said he deserved as well, but they played through it. They played through a physical, chippy game, and they won. They came out on the right side of it. And I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that Pitt won in a way that they hadn't before, that they hadn't in a long time. Let's talk more about Blake Hinson, man, because he was the story of the night. not just with his play, not just knocking down all 7 of his 3-pointers, scoring 24 points, grabbing 8 rebounds as well. That was huge, and that went underrated. I think his ability to rebound amongst the trees in against those big athletic bigs that Duke has. He was sensational. He played with an energy and a passion that was on a different level, and that's for a guy who is already incredibly passionate, insanely high energy all of the time. He was on one. He wanted to win this game so badly. He knew that Pitt needed to win this game so badly, and he gave Pitt every ounce of what he had. He gave them literally everything, and then of course he caps it by running up on the scorer's table, I believe, probably feet from where I'm sitting right now. And he just drinks it all in from the Duke students. He enjoyed being the villain tonight, and he played the role perfectly. That is the Blake Hinson that Pitt needs him to be if they are going to not just salvage the season, but maybe, perhaps make a little bit of a run, make some noise in this league, see what happens. He's got to be on all the time in order for them to be a competitive team, be competitive against a team of this caliber. And Duke's a great team. And Pitt needed him to be at his absolute best, and that's what he was. And we've talked a little about Jalen Lowe too, but I mean, this guy just continues to get better. He continues to up the degree of difficulty on what he's doing and do what he's doing at an even higher level than before. This, like I said, is an incredibly difficult environment for anyone to play in, let alone a freshman this was the 3rd start of his career. And he was absolutely sensational. Like I said, no turnovers to 6 assists. He scored 17 points as well. He hit some clutch free throws down the stretch. And he hit probably the biggest shot of the night. It was a pull-up 3-pointer with Kyle Filipowski in his face. And talking to Jalen after the game, I asked him about that shot, and he just said it felt like high school. I mean, to have that kind of serenity, that kind of presence of mind, that sense of calm in such a raucous environment, in an environment that, even had me shaking, had my heart racing. I can only imagine what it must have been like to be out on that floor, to decide that you're going to take that shot and then watch it come in and get to silence a crowd like this and deliver such a landmark win for a school like this in an environment like this. Jalen Lowe was absolutely sensational. I also feel like we would be very remiss if we didn't talk about Federico. He was tremendous tonight, made his first start in about 6 weeks. And he, the stats I don't think really tell the whole story. I mean, he scored 9 points, hit a big free throw at the end. And it was the only one he made. He went 1 for 3 from the line, grabbed 5 rebounds, although I thought he boxed out against the Duke bigs really well and created opportunities for other guys like Hinson. Zach Austin had 5 boards. Carrington had a couple. Leggett had 4. He created opportunities for other guys to get rebounds and for Pitt to control the boards. They out-rebounded Duke 32-25, which is not something I thought even in my wildest dreams would happen. Even if, Pitt was to play its most competitive game coming in here, I didn't think that would have happened. I didn't expect that at all. But yeah, Federico, he did a very good job on Kyle Filipowski. I mean, this was a guy who had dominated Pitt thoroughly. I mean, when you talk about how Duke had played against Pitt in the past, I mean, it was Filipowski kind of wrecking games from the inside just because he was so much more physical than the Pitt bigs, and he also had the skills to step out and shoot threes. He just was almost an impossible cover, but Federico did an unbelievable job. Held him under 20 points, only 19 points. Shot 5 of 10 from the field, made 3 threes. A lot of those were big, but he also had 5 turnovers as well. He committed 3 fouls too. Federico was fantastic on both ends, both kind of keeping Filipowski in check, and then also, I mean, you saw it right from the jump. He was going right at Filipowski. He showed no fear, man. This was a guy who was lacking confidence in a huge way. He wasn't, right mentally because he hadn't been playing very well. And he comes out on the first possession of the game, takes a dribble drive right at Filipowski and scores for the first bucket of the game. I mean, his ability to convert those bunnies, convert those dunks, and those layups were better than he's done all year. It's something that it was one of the few things, even as he started to play better over recent weeks, that he had still been kind of missing from his game. And he found that today, and Pitt needed it so badly. Pitt needed an inside presence on both ends, and Federico really delivered it. He played through foul trouble as well. Ended up fouling out, but I mean, just played so hard, drew 4 fouls as well, and just managed the physicality of the game and gave Pitt some muscle inside that they really, really desperately needed. Pitt's bench is kind of shrinking. They only went 8 deep tonight, but they got contributions from really up and down the lineup. even Will Jeffress, a guy who played only 4 minutes, as a defensive sub, I thought he brought great energy. Guillermo Diaz-Graham was awesome. When Fetty was in foul trouble, he covered for him and delivered some great defense and rebounding against Filipowski, scored 4 points as well. Those were some big buckets. And Ish Leggett, we're going to keep talking about this guy. He's fully healthy, it appears, and back to his old self. Only 11 points, but 2 assists and 4 rebounds. And I thought each one of his 5 made field goals were just huge. They were just massive. They came at points where it seemed like Pitt was kind of, going to let things get out of hand. There was a point in the second half where I think they got saddled with, I want to say 6 fouls and including a technical, over a span of about 4 or 5 minutes. They were coming fast and furious. The game slowed to a crawl, and Pitt couldn't score during that period. They kind of let it seep over into their offense, but what does Ish Leggett do? He drives right at Tyrese Proctor and delivers a tough and one bucket that really stops the bleeding, really stabilized things, and allowed Pitt to kind of go into a media timeout with a little bit of momentum back on their side and just level things out, keep things easy, make sure that the game didn't really spiral out of control. Duke never led. I want to look. Excuse me. I have to. Duke led by 3 in the first half with 7 minutes and 16 seconds left. They never led by more than a possession. And Leggett would think was a big part of that, just kind of keeping the game under control. Now the question, not really a problem, is just how does Pitt kind of sustain this? How do they move forward? How do they bottle this up into some big games in the future against next week? They got to travel to Georgia Tech. I believe they go on the road to face Miami in the game after that. And those are 2 good teams. Those are 2, Georgia Tech, I think you could qualify more as scrappy, but they got some talent. They're in year 1 of a new head coach, but they play really hard, and they played even this Duke team. They've beaten them once and played them close here at Cameron Indoor in a loss. So that's not a gimme either. Miami, obviously, the kind of talent that they have. They're a team that, even though they're struggling right now, they're liable to make a run to the Sweet 16, Elite 8, whatever. There's so many good parts of that team, even when they're struggling. So Pitt just has a tough road ahead. It doesn't get any easier from here, but at least they kind of have some momentum on their side. They have some belief in themselves. They have some tangible evidence of who they can be, and that's really all it's really all they needed from this game. Not even a win. They just needed to kind of believe in themselves again. They needed to get their swagger back, and that's what they did. So with that, I'm going to head out of here. Thank you all for tuning into another Inside Pitt Postgame Report. My name is Stephen Thompson, signing off from Cameron Indoor Stadium. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/@InsideThePanthers, and follow all our work at InsideThePanthers.com. See you all on the next episode.